So like I said last week, we are splitting up the viewer response video and my final review video to give both of them more time. So this week I have selected some of your comments about Mindy Kaling's book Is Everyone Hanging Out Without Me, and I'm going to respond to them. Kind of scared. Sana Likes says, it's almost as if when she's criticizing arbitrary beauty standards, it's not because people should do or not do whatever they want to, but because that particular standard is not to her liking. And I sort of felt this way too. It seemed kind of like if Mindy Kaling didn't like something, then that something should not be done. And off the top of my head, I can think of the chest hair chapter kind of seemed a little bit that way. Some of the rules for men and boys. If you can think of any other parts that seem like that, you can let me know. But then I also agree with you when you said you did giggle a few times, because I definitely got some laughs from this book. But then also, like you, I disagreed with a lot of the things being said, which of course it does not bother me to read things that I disagree with. I can definitely read something that I don't agree with, but it sort of seemed like some of the stuff was maybe cheap humor or just being offensive. Commenter Justified. I really like at the end of your comment when you said, I feel that the Mindy we know now would have written a better book than the Mindy who wrote this a few years ago while still on The Office. I also felt that the book seemed kind of rushed, but also apparently Mindy Kaling is writing a second book, so I am going to hold out the hope that this one will be maybe a little more thoughtful and better developed. Sorry, taking off my Christmas socks. They haven't been on since Christmas, they're just Christmas themed. I should move on. This comment was from the video where I talked about Mindy Kaling using the T word and how I mentioned it was a degrading and an offensive word to use. Honestly, I think that anybody can find any word or group of words, or maybe even some weird sound offensive or degrading. I do see where you're coming from, but I just feel like people should continue to be themselves and say what they want to, despite how others think of them for it. And I want to respond to this as someone who has studied language so that maybe I can offer a different perspective. And I also want to say no ill feelings towards this commenter, because I think this is a really great discussion starter. First of all, I will agree that there are some people who are super touchy and they can find just about anything offensive, but I also do not think that finding the T word offensive is being overly sensitive. On the whole, like I mentioned in a previous video, we do not personally assign meanings to words. Word meanings definitely evolve and they change over time, but in each given generation, society as a whole usually assigns meanings and connotations to words. And those meanings are rooted in our culture and in our language and in our history, and that is also why we're able to have dictionaries. And the T word is a word that was popularized by using it in a degrading way, and maybe that meaning will totally evolve into something completely different someday, but right now it's still an offensive word to very large groups of people. And something that I've learned growing up is that if you say offensive things under the guise of just being yourself or not caring what people think, then you end up turning a lot of people away from you. Now there was one more comment that I wanted to read, but I went back to look for it and I could not find it. But basically the person was saying that finding this offensive was giving too much power to a word, and I don't think that that's the case. Words are incredibly powerful things. They can change your emotions in a heartbeat. They have started wars, and people often say, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. But words can inflict psychological damage, and that can take a lot longer to heal than even physical damage. And words can also be powerful triggers, where if someone hears the pejorative term used against them, any future instances where they hear that word, whether or not it is meant to be harmful, can re-trigger all of the harmful past things that's happened to them that they have associated with that word. And so I think that not using words that have negative connotations to large groups of people is just being respectful to those words and to those people, regardless of if those words have any personal effect on me. And like I said in a previous video, I don't think that Mindy Kaling knew about the word, but I don't think that makes it right, and I am going to briefly touch on that in my final review video. I'm kind of tired of talking about it, so it will only be brief, but I have some things to say about it still. And also, I totally respect those two commenters' opinions. Thank you very much for your comments. I think that it is really great that we get to share our different opinions about these things. So this week, feel free to respond to anything that I have said this week. I'm sure something I've said warrants a response. And like I said, next week, you will be getting my personal review of the book. Also, thank you so much for the feedback. It makes me really happy to know that we have such thoughtful people reading these books with us. So I will see you guys Wednesday.